All right, Shalom Aleichem, everybody, and welcome. We are mamish, less than a week away from Rosh Hashanah. And Baruch Hashem, we finished Hilchas Dayanis, Hilchas Edis, Hilchas Halva, Hilchas Tayim V'nitan, and we're ready to come to the Yom Adin. So let's, last year we discussed one thing that's connected to Hilchas, to Rosh Hashanah. Today I will discuss another interesting part that touches on many halachas, many tidbits from Rosh Hashanah. Now, I actually think I gave a similar share last year about this. There are many minhagim about hataras nadarim. Hataras nadarim, how it should be done and when it should be done. There are many minhagim. Okay, it all starts in the Gemara. It all starts based on the Gemara in Nadarim. The Gemara says, one who wants to be sure that he has no issues with Nadarim all year, he should stand up. Rosh Hashanah over here doesn't mean literally Rosh Hashanah. It means somewhere in the beginning of the year he should stand up. And by this, he's on the smooth path, just in case he will make a neder. He's putting himself that he's being matir the neder, or mevatel. Actually, I should say in that term he's being mevatel the neder. There's being mevatel the neder and being matir a neder. To being mevatel a neder, it's a mesiras meidah. Mesiras meidah. There's now no big halachas, too many halachas attached to it. But to be matir a neder, you have to actually have a bezdin to be matir a neder. And that's where we come in, because we are now, quote unquote, the dayanim mumchim, which is what some people question by the nusach that you say in Ataras Nadarim. In the Schos it says Shimuna Rabbeisai Dayanim Mumchim, and there were some that challenged it and said, "Come on, you see who's sitting around the table? They are Dayanim Mumchim." Some had an issue with saying Mumchim. Ad kedei kach, because we learned Hilchas Dayanim, we know that today's days there is no Dayin Mumcha. Because if there would be a Dayin Mumcha, we don't even need three in all our dinim. We can have one. So how do we even say the word mumchim? So that we don't really mean mumchim as experts. We mean mumchim as a title of a kavod, right? So because of that Gemara, that you should be mevatel in advance in the Darim. So we do something. We do it twice actually. We do it erev Rosh Hashanah. We do Ataras Nadarim. And then we do it Kol Nidre again. Now, there is, in the Lubavitch Siddur, there are two paragraphs on top of Ataras Nadarim. Actually, the first paragraph, the Rebbe clearly writes that this statement is not from the Alter Rebbe. And he doesn't say who inserted it, but it's not from the Alter Rebbe. But let me first say what it says, but it's not the Alter Rebbe writing it. He says, Mavur b'Gemara u'Paiskim, it's brought in the Gemara u'Paiskim, she'ein shayich, heter v'hafara, rak l'shvuos in the Dorim shadam noider or nishba b'meshenegei la'atzmai. A person could only be meifir, can only be matir, things, the Dorim that are applicable to himself. Kagoin oichel, oiloyechel, ishan, oiloyishan, but if there's somebody else involved, let him be from any religion. That's one paragraph. And the Rebbe has a hara. The Rebbe says those words, this paragraph is not from the Alter Rebbe. But then there is 5-6 words. And these 5-6 words cause a turmoil. Now, I think these words are from the Alter Rebbe. Where the Alter Rebbe says, "Be'erev Rosh Hashanah, koidem chatzois, toiv sheyehei eda shleima." There are 3 points that the Alter Rebbe says over here. that you should do Ataras Nadarim Erev Rosh Hashanah. Number 2, preferably Koydem Chatzos. And third, that you should have an Eidah Shlema. So you know that there are different minhagim. There are different minhagim of how many people you sit down to be matir and neder. I mean, again, you don't have a yachid mumcha, so you can't have a yachid. But since every bezdin is 3, I think majority of the world does hataras nadarim in front of 3 people. But the Alter Rebbe writes, Toiv sheyehei Eidah Shlema. And there were many other, I think the Chassam Sofer and many others wanted a minyan. Now the problem, or I shouldn't say the problem, the issue with the minyan is a halacha issue that we discussed. Shloisha is not a bezdin shakel. We're not supposed to have an even number. Are you really considering this a bezdin? What you're doing there, are you doing it as a bezdin? If you're doing it as a bezdin, you can't have an even number. There's no bezdin shakel. That's why 3 is preferable. But if it's not a bezdin, I understand why a minyan, 10 people, an even number is fine. And Sfarim explain why they want 10. But if it's a bezdin, you shouldn't have an even number. What is the raya that it's not necessarily a bezdin? Because when you choose the 10 people who are sitting there, or you're not choosing, it's just random. The first 10 people sit down there, and you just say the Shimun Rabbeisai. Yeah? So over there, we find that anybody could be there. A father could be saying it, and his son is sitting there. Kroivim, there is no problem to have a karev as part of the group who is matir the neder. And the lashon that's constantly brought over and over again, that the gabi these halachas, you could do it bikroivim, you could do it balayla. Now, balayla means, we know that we learned in Hilchas Dayanim that bezdin doesn't sit at night. Tchilas din doesn't sit at night. So here, if it's a din, you shouldn't do it early morning. In other words, if somebody's waking up out of Rosh Hashanah, Kaidam Alois HaShachar, maybe he has to wait for after Alois HaShachar to do it. If it's a din. You're muted. Are you trying to say something?
We don't convene Erev Yom Tov.
Oh, and that's another shaila. The whole forget about Erev Yom Tov. If you remember that the Shulchan Aruch says there is no bezdin on Tishrei and Nisan. There's no bezdin on Tishrei and Nisan. So how does this work? So the lashon of poskim is that it's not really a bezdin by the very fact that you see that you could use kroivim and you could be by night. And what was the other one I just said? Kroivim used by night. There's one more. There's an ayah that's not a typical bezdin, but everybody stumbles everybody's caught with the Alter Rebbe's words that it should be koydem chatzos. Why? Why should it preferably be koydem chatzos? Some want to say, if it's a minig or a good thing to be done, like any other mitzvah, there's a reason makdim la mitzvahs. If something you have to get it done early, why wait for the letzte minute? But I saw some others saying that there are different nischos in the Hataras Nadarim. The Lubavitch nusach is we only say Hataras Nadarim. There are other nischos that have a second part to it. And the second part to it is also if chas v'shalom a person deserves some kind of punishment or a cherem or whatever like that, please release the person from that too. And actually, the Rebbe discusses l'cha'ira in our bezdin response to the second time when the person stands up and says Hareini Moisa Meidar Mikana Lahaba. You listen to the words, to the response of the bezdin. The bezdin says Ein kan lo neider v'lo shmua v'lo yisr v'lo, and he said it's only good, only brachas. He never mentioned anything about klala. So really, somebody wrote this to the Rebbe. The response from the Bezdin to the person standing there is mashma that the last part is also somewhere hinted in. But yet, we don't mention the last part. We only say only about Ataras Nadarim. But because there is something about the second part there, the Kabbalas Nazifa Rahman al-San, if somebody's supposed to get a punishment, and that you don't want to deal with after Chatzos. That's something that you don't want to deal with after Chatzos and Erev Yom Tov. So therefore, that might be a reason why you bring it earlier. You try to do it. That's the only, people don't really know why the Alter Rebbe stressed that it should be Kodim Chatzos. So let's summarize. We learned that a Bezdin has, here's the other one. We learned a Bezdin can't be a Bezdin Shakel. In this case, the Bezdin is either a 3, fine, but we do a minyan. And the minyan is an even number, okay? It's not a real Bezdin. The people sitting there could be your relative. It's not a real Bezdin. And it could be done balayla because it's not a real Bezdin. Now, could you say a svara that I have 10 is an extra? I could do it with 3. Would you throw in the conversation of Nimtza Echem Korav Apostle? Once I'm done with 3, the extras don't ruin it. So anyways, let me go into an interesting shaila here. Sure,
Isn't Hataras Nadarim, it's a Mishnah in Chagiga.
And it's also...
Rabbanan pulled it out of the luf.
Right.
It has no basis in anything.
But
therefore, the Rabbanan could set any criteria that they want.
Okay, so in other words, what you're saying...
You can have with Provim, you can do whatever they want.
First of all, there's a whole section in Shulchan Aruch of Hataras Neder. And for Neder, you need a Bezdin. You need a Bezdin. You can't just... Okay.
Yeah, but they set it up because it's not according to the Torah, you don't have an out. But they created it so they could set it up any way they want.
So let me discuss 2 things. The Ataras Nadarim that we're going to do is going to be twice. It's going to be Erev Rosh Hashanah. It's going to be by Kol Nidrei. Erev Rosh Hashanah. Yossi asked, "Well, it's Erev Yom Tov. There's no Bezdin Erev Yom Tov, right?" Who said? How about why can't we just do it on Rosh Hashanah? Besides for the fact that it's Tishrei, is there an issue of doing Hataras Nadarim on Shabbos or on Yom Tov? So I posted on the WhatsApp 2 pieces in Shulchan Aruch. One in Hilchos Shabbos and one in Hilchos Yom Kippurim. In Hilchos Shabbos, it's Hashgacha Pratis. I have a group that I learn Mishnayos with. And today I finished Masechta Shabbos with them. And this is the last Mishnah Masechta Shabbos. The last Mishnah Masechta Shabbos, if you look on the WhatsApp, I quoted the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Shabbos, Siman Shin Mem Aleph. The Alter Rebbe says, Matirim Nadarim b'Shabbos im heim l'tzoyrech Shabbos. You're not allowed to be matir neder on Shabbos. You're not allowed to, unless it's the tzorech Shabbos. If it's a tzorech Shabbos, you're allowed to. Kegoin, what would be an example? If somebody said, I promise I'm becoming vegetarian, I'm not going to eat meat, and now Shabbos he has cholent, and he wants to eat the meat, so for tzorech Shabbos, you could be matir neder. But if it's not l'tzorech Shabbos, you're not. Now the question in the Gemara over there, the Gemara asks, what's the problem to be matir neder b'Shabbos? What issues are there? So we already know the answer. Because since matir neder needs a bezdin, Hataras Nadarim needs a bezdin, and bezdin doesn't sin on Shabbos. And why doesn't bezdin sin on Shabbos? We already know the answer also. Even that's a gzeira shema yichtov. Right? They'll write down the discussion, they'll write down the psak din, whatever it is. So because of the Bezdin not sitting on Shabbos, that's why you can't be matir neder on Shabbos. That's one reason. The other reason the Gemara brings, who says there's no reason Bezdin shouldn't sit on Shabbos? The reason is a different, the other reason why you can't be matir neder on Shabbos is, it's pasha avach gezach. Why on Shabbos you have to get involved with Ataras Nadarim? Couldn't you take care of it during the week? It's an inyan choil. And there's a nafkamina la'alacha. obviously the first nafkamina halacha is could somebody be matir neder and Shabbos, but the difference in halacha in these two things. Now, where does it play a role next week? Next week it will play a role again. You will see that when it comes to Yom Kippur, and that's the second picture I took and I put on the WhatsApp, there are two groups of people. And I would think that most of the people are makbid, that they start Yom Kippur with Kol Nidre, and they don't, Kol Nidre, which is Ataras Nadarim, they don't let's the minut. There is an Indian that Kol Nidre should be said at a certain time. What time? Rabbi said, I look in the copy I brought from Hilchas Yom Kippur, Siman Tov Reish Yud Tes. The Alter Rebbe, Siman Tov Reish Yud Tes, Seif Dalid. Says the Alter Rebbe, Noyagim lahaschil Kol Nidre b'boid yoim. It's preferable to start Kol Nidre when it's still Erev Yom Tiv. Why? The aim matir in the Dorim b'Shabbos v'Yom Tiv. Because on Shabbos v'Yom Tiv, let's use our reason, because we're learning Hilchos Dayanim. Because the Bezdin doesn't sit on Shabbos v'Yom Tiv, and you need a Bezdin to be matir neder. So on Yom Kippur, you don't have a Bezdin to be matir. You're not allowed to be matir. And these Nadarim that you're being matir is not with Tzarech Shabbos Yom Tiv. Frek the Alter Rebbe, v'alfal pi she'einonu matirim on Nadarim shel ha'avar. Even though a typical Ataras Nadarim means I'm stuck, I'm in a dilemma, I made a pledge, and I can't get out of it, please be matir. That's not what we're saying in Kol Nidre. In Kol Nidre is the future. I'm cleaning up in case I will make any more from now on. Let it be null and void. V'alfal pi she'einonu matirim ha'nadarim shel ha'avar elo anu mevatlim ha'nadarim shel ha'haba. So maybe that could be done. For that, I don't necessarily. You have to learn pshat here, and for that, you don't need a bezdin. A mesiras meidah, maybe you don't need a bezdin. Mikol makoim. It looks like it's very similar to Ataras Nadarim. And if you're going to allow yourself to do Kol Nidre nighttime, we're afraid Shema Yitu Loimar Matirin Nadarim b'Shabbos v'Yom Tiv. Maybe somebody will say you're allowed to be Matir Neder on Shabbos v'Yom Tiv, and you're not allowed to. Umitam zeh. And this is taka the reason why noyagin lahamid beis anoshim eitzel hashatz. This is taka the reason why when the chazan says Kol Nidre, there are two people standing next to him. Kidei shelo yitu leimar matirin nedarim b'yochid. For the same reason, there is no yochid muncha. See, it's a whole paretz. This is all hilchas dayanim. I know you want to know why we're learning this. It's all hilchas dayanim. There is no yochid muncha today. So really, if there would be a Yachid Mumcha, you could be matir in neder, but go in front of one person can be matir in neder. But there is no Yachid Mumcha, and nobody should make that mistake. So the guy who's singing out loud Kol Nidre has to have two people next to him. So there should be a bezdin. And the bezdin, now, when you're matir in neder, people should know it's a bezdin. Now, because we're taking it serious as a bezdin, and bezdin doesn't sit in Shabbos v'Yom Tiv, so it's preferable you start it before nightfall, before Yom Kippur. It's a whole catch-22.
Is that for Shkia?
Yeah. The problem is, a lot of people, I even think it says in many Mahagim, that, you start it. I don't know, you try. I don't know how, but you do try. You do try. For this reason, for the reason what we learned. Now, let's move on to another discussion about this. How about a woman, and she has a neder? This is a controversy. What should a woman do if she has a neder? She also has to keep, and now in a din Torah, Shlomo will tell you, every second din Torah he has is with a woman fighting a man. So they go to Bezdin. If a woman has a neder, she also has to be matir her neder. She's not mitzvah v'sechet tishmar. So how does she deal with this? So it actually brought that Rav Yoshev said that women should say Ataras Nadarim. They should now. How are they going to say it? They're going to stand up in front of. Some say, you know what? It's not sneeze for women to say Ataras Nadarim, but make sure every woman, when it comes to Kol Nidre, they say the words Kol Nidre. We're double dipping. We're basically doing twice. We're saying Ataras Nadarim at Erev Rosh Hashanah, and we're saying Kol Nidre on Yom Kippur. But at least let her say Kol Nidre. And you have to. And I saw in Svarim to make sure that the women should say. You should tell the women they should say it. But if they're not saying it, how do they get? How do they deal with their Nidarim? Others pull this trick. Is that because a husband could be matir his wife's Nidarim? So some do is when the husband does his Ataras Nidarim, he finishes off and says, and this should also apply, he doesn't give a whole speech all over again. He says this should also apply to my wife's Nidarim.
But it can only be matir his wife's neder if it affects him.
Correct. Okay.
You can't be matir a neder that affects whatever she decides to want to do.
Correct. Because we just said that, right?
Yeah.
No, but she can make him a shliach. Because Chazal say, the Shulchan Aruch in Yeridei Siman Reish Lamed Daled says, Habal Nasa Shliach Li'ishol Al Nidrei Ishtray, as long as there are three people. Okay. Now, I saw a beautiful shaila. I don't remember where I saw it. Let me give me a minute. I saw a shaila. What happens if, I forgot where it was. If the people listening, every person has to say it on themselves. You can't just have 10 people saying it together. Get it done, right? Every person should say it to himself. But I saw a shaila. What happens if one person says it, and other person says, "Me too"? You know the Me Too movement, and the other person says, "Me too." Whatever he just said, for me also. Would that be good enough? Give me a second. Why would that even work? 1 second. I saw that. I thought it was a very interesting discussion. Would that work? Who was that? I think it was Rabbi Yankov Kamenetsky that discussed this. Okay, another thing. You know where it has to do in our halacha? When you do Ataras Nadarim, all the dinim of Haggadas Edus, and speaking to the dying, if the dying has to sit and the person and the Bali dinim have to stand, if you're treating this like real bezdin, then the halachas of sitting and standing apply there too. Oh, here I see it. Yesh le'estapik. This is Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky. Yesh le'estapik. Im yachol adam leimer b'ksara. Could a person say in short, Hataras Nedarim ba'amiras afani kamoyu. Your friend says the whole Megillah, and you just say, "Me too." Is that good enough? Was that good enough? Yeah? So what's the svara? The svara is like this. Since Shulchan Aruch says that the noider has to come in front of the people, in front of the bezdin, and he can't necessarily make a shliach to go get it. You can't send somebody else to be matan neder for you. You have to do it yourself. And the reason is because we have to hear you regret for what you did. You have to hear charata. Nobody else is regretting what you did. We have to hear sincere regret for us to be mater your neder. Bezdin has to hear charata. We don't sense charata from a middleman. Yeah? And that you can't pass on to a shliach. That's what the Aruch HaShulchan says also. So if that's correct, somebody gives a speech, and somebody says, "Oh yeah, I feel bad, I shouldn't really," and what do I say? Me too. Afani kamoyu. You see it's almost like sending a shliach to do your dirty work. So according to Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, he says, I don't believe that would be good enough. So his Talmud asked him, Ar Shaila, from Ar Halacha, by Eidus, what did we learn? And the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, that the Gemara says that by Eidus, sometimes, if one aid says the whole Megillah, and the second one comes and says, exactly, I saw exactly, me too. Count me in. Exactly what he says. Sometimes we consider that as a peer of Eidus. It's good enough. Right? Minat Torah, that would be good enough. It's only the Rabbanon. The Rabbanon said we won't accept it. We want to grill him. Minat Torah, if the guy says Afani Kamoyu by Eidus, it's good enough. So why over here by Hataras Nadarim wouldn't we accept it? So Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky answered that you can't necessarily compare Haggadas Eidus to Hataras Nadarim. Because by Haggadas Eidus, all we need two people to say the same thing. We need to know that two people agree that this is what happened. So if one person says it, and the other person shuckled with the cup, okay, I know that two people believe this is what happened. But over here, I need to hear it from you. I need to see you regret. I need to see that you're really upset at what you did. Me too doesn't do anything to me. Doesn't convince me that you have charata. So this is the debate about the Me Too movement. What else about Ataras Nadarim? That's it.
You keep saying the Me Too movement. You want to explain to us what that's about?
you always want to get